I had no intention of making a review video or any sort of video based on All Out. But after what I just watched, I have to talk about it. I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it with you. That was some of the most fun I have had watching wrestling, and that is some of the weirdest I have ever felt while watching pro wrestling, and I'm very thankful that I got to share it with a ton of you. At one point while we were streaming, I had over 200 people. 200 people we had in the stream, and that is insane for me. I've been streaming for almost 4 years on Twitch and YouTube doing different stuff, and that is the most people I have ever just had participating in any sort of stream, watch along, or whatever. So before we go any further, thank you so much to everybody who stopped by. It was super kind. It made it extremely memorable. Most of you at this point are fully aware that while I am newer to wrestling, I am extremely new to watching AEW. I've been a WWE fan for a year and a half, diehard at this point. I never miss a show, and I finally started delving more into the AEW world, and my first show was Double or Nothing. My second big show was All In, and now I've just watched All Out, and I can safely say that that was the best AEW show that I have watched thus far. I don't have a full list of my favorite PLE/pay-per-views of all time that I've watched, so I don't know where exactly this one would fit in, but I can guarantee that it would be in my top 10, and it might even crack my top 5. Again, I don't have a list, so I'm just kind of estimating. Now, the reason I said I wasn't expecting to make a video on this is because in my last video about AEW, I said that I was going to watch AEW for a full month as a full-time viewer for the first time and make a video of what that was like, diving into watching the weekly show and the pay-per-view. After watching Dynamite for the first time this past week, I really didn't expect to be making an AEW themed video for another month, but this pay-per-view was sick. The show kicked off with MJF versus Daniel Garcia, and this was going to be the first one that I remember seeing at the weekly show, the Dynamite show. I saw that they had cut a promo. I remember MJF hit Daniel Garcia with a bottle on his head. That's why he was wearing a wrap. So this was going to be the first show, and I'm glad it was the opener, that I was able to connect something that I had been watching from the weekly show and be able to say, yeah, I kind of know where we're at here. I know where the heat's coming from. And overall, it was a really fun show. I liked that there was drama. I liked that, especially the drama at the end with the handshake that did not go as well as they had hoped. I would have been really surprised if that handshake had gone well. It really wouldn't have fit the promo that was going on earlier in the week. But this did make me wonder something, and I wanted to ask, is MJF not the big draw anymore? I know he's opening the show, and opening a pay-per-view or PLE is a pretty big moment. It's, you want to start big and you want to finish big, and then you hope everything in the middle can keep up. But I was a little surprised that in the short time that I have been watching and how much I've heard MJF be built up, I would have expected to see MJF maybe in main event situation. So maybe there's a lack of understanding on my part. Is he kind of just not really in a mainline storyline, or do they just put those kind of mainline storylines to open shows? I know he was in the middle of the show at All In, but I understand that's kind of a WrestleMania environment, so all the matches for the most part are supposed to be big. I could be completely misreading it, but I was a little surprised that MJF didn't feel like he's a part of the main event type of feud. I understand Swerve and Hangman had a much bigger thing going on, but I'm just curious, is MJF still heavily involved with big time storylines, or is that era kind of past? Because I really like him and I like his promos. I'm not trying to come off disrespectful or anything. I'm not saying that he opened the show, so it's a bad thing. For some reason, I thought he was like the main guy, and I guess maybe I misunderstood. Up next was a title match for the tag titles at AEW, and it was the Young Bucks versus BCC, Blackpool Combat Club. Now, I had seen the Young Bucks before on the Patreon, but I don't remember much about the BCC. I feel like I've seen them. I think I saw them at All In. I watch a lot of wrestling now, especially because of the Patreon, so like I forget people I have and haven't seen sometimes. My apologies on that. But the big thing I took away from this one, while I didn't think the match as a whole was super memorable for me, because looking back, I only remember a few spots that I thought was really interesting, but this guy Claudio really stood out to me. For some reason, I don't know if I had seen him before, but he really stood out as someone who was just interesting to me. And I do enjoy the Young Bucks and what they do in general. I just think past what I've seen the first couple times I watched them, there's not a ton there that draws me in character-wise. I think I'm really into their in-ring stuff only at this point. But this Claudio guy just seems like a badass, and I really actually liked the spinning thing he did where he spins him around. I thought he was gonna let him go and like launch him out of the ring or something like that, which would have been like crazy dangerous, I feel like, but I guess it would have been kind of cool. I don't have a ton to say on that one. Overall, I enjoyed the match, but it wasn't something that stuck out to me as something I'm going to remember from this show. But I am thankful I got to find another wrestler that I'm interested in seeing more of, is Claudio Castagnoli. Up next was my favorite match of the entire show, Will Ospreay versus Pac. Now, Will Ospreay is one of my top 3 favorite AEW wrestlers. So when he came out to the hype ass music and he's got the whole crowd doing Ospreay, Ospreay, he's wearing like the Assassin's Creed stuff. The dude's just cool. He's just cool. Like he's honestly, he's cracked up there in like one of my favorite just overall wrestlers, not just AEW wrestlers. I feel like going into this, I would have only called him one of my favorite AEW wrestlers, but this match was so fun. I don't understand the people that say that this style of wrestling isn't real wrestling, or it's not the same, or the flippy stuff and the choreographed landings and stuff. It's preference. At the end of the day, this is all entertainment, right? And if I'm super entertained and it's making me want to watch more of this show, I don't understand how you can be against this style of wrestling. It makes me and Tally, my fiance, who I watch all of my wrestling with and who is also in the live streams. Thank you all for being so welcoming of her to this community, by the way. Hell, I got her a Will Ospreay t-shirt for her birthday this week. She just got it yesterday and got to wear it to watch this. So we are very into this style and Will Ospreay, and I get it. I feel like I see why so many people do enjoy this style. And I know I'm hyping up Will, but Pac also really stepped up and made this an awesome match. A little side note, one of the random little things that I think is cool, you know how people like that they can run up a wall and do a flip and land on their feet? Will doing it and like running up a person's chest and doing a flip, I don't know, man, I'm easy to please or something. That just looks so cool. Now, this was the first match of the night where something that I've noticed in AEW, WWE is guilty of this as well. In fact, I feel like every promotion I've seen is guilty of this as well, but I feel like AEW just does it so much that it really stands out to me. They would have a really sick moment, a true climax moment that felt like it would be the end of the match, and then it was like one more kick out than I think was necessary. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my hyped up kick out moments. I like my surprise, my close calls or near falls or whatever. I'm all about it. I love when it gets a huge pop. But I feel like if you're gonna do that, you really have to be confident that you're gonna follow it up with something that's worth that kick out, that's worth losing that cool finish. Now, in this match in particular, I really feel like they did fine. I feel like they kicked out more than I thought they should have, but then they came through and they still delivered on a true great ending. Now, that's not how I felt in another match, but we will get to that. Overall, Will Ospreay, Pac, thank you both. That was an absolute banger. I love both of your styles. Favorite match of the night. Will Ospreay has moved his way up to my #1 favorite in AEW. So the big question after such a good match is, how do you follow it? Well, if you need a guide on that, ask Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander. Got it. Some of these names are hard. But seriously, this was actually a really cool and a really nice way to follow such a match. The match before it was so perfect as a regular 1v1, no extra stipulation. So if you're going to put on such a banger and you're not 100% certain that the people after it can put on an equal or a perfect follow-up with just a regular 1v1, screw it. Make it a Chicago street fight and have them hit absolutely nasty spots and crazy stuff to absolutely make it so they do follow that match. They're going through tables off of stages. They're hitting each other with light tubes, which is, if those are real, that's actually really scary. The thumbtacks, and she landed on the thumbtacks in, you know, but it was just good. It was brutal. It was a really good follow-up, and I wasn't really aware of either of these wrestlers too much. I'd seen a little bit of them in the past. I believe I saw Willow get turned on, or maybe it's the other way around where one of them turned heel against each other. It might have been at Double or I can't remember when it was. I'm sorry, but it was cool. They even did a moment where they were strapped together with like a chain. They used really unique weapons that I'm not used to seeing, and it was actually interesting. It didn't feel forced. None of it felt overdone. It felt like a truly brutal match, and I really did love it. I was really worried that whatever was going to follow the Will and Pac match was going to struggle, but this one just didn't. It was fantastic, and it was up there. I'm pretty sure that was my second favorite match of the night. By the way, if you had fun at the watch along, we do a ton of watch alongs of matches that you guys submit over on the Patreon. So if you're interested, feel free to check out the completely free tier. You can just check it out for free. There's free matches that are put up there. And if you like it, you could always upgrade to the paid version, or you could just stick with the free stuff. Either way, check out the Patreon. Now for the AEW Continental Championship, I'm not going to say a bunch here because I just don't have much to say, and I don't really believe in, I'm just going to talk out my ass here and pretend that I got a lot from that match when I really didn't. It was cool seeing some people that I recognized from the Patreon videos. Like Okada was really cool, hearing his music, hearing like the coin drop, the Rainmaker thing. It actually got a little bit of a pop out of me because I think it's cool that I'm seeing wrestlers that you guys are showing me over there. I'm starting to like them, and then I see them during a live show and I recognize their music. So little moments like that you guys are helping create for us is pretty cool. But overall, I just didn't get much from this match. It felt like just a regular fun fatal 4-way match, and the only part that I feel like would have been cool, but I was a little left out of the moment because I don't know who they are that well. I mean, Okada at this point, I know who he is, but the Takeshita, I'm sorry, I'm probably saying his name wrong a little bit, but there was a moment where they both entered the ring, and from what I understood in the live chat is that this was maybe not a dream match, but a dream some scenario where it was cool because they've never faced each other. So I was a little left out of that moment, which kind of sucks because I feel like that was a big selling point for a lot of people. But since I didn't get to really feel that, I was kind of left out of a lot of what was going on. Orange Cassidy was kind of cool, like doing the whole pocket thing. He's pretty chill. But overall, I don't have a lot to say on it. It was entertaining, but it wasn't going to be one that I'm going to remember a bunch about. So for the TBS Championship, someone I'm not super familiar with, Shida, took on Mercedes Moné. And I've been trying so hard to appreciate and get into Mercedes Moné. I just can't. I don't know what it is. There's something just like remarkably uninteresting about her for me, and I think it's a character issue. I'm not really someone to criticize in-ring talent. That's not really my specialty whatsoever. I just know what entertains me, and I know what doesn't. And there's one thing that I know consistently doesn't entertain me, and it's when the match seems like it relies heavily on Mercedes Moné. Now, Shida was interesting. I felt like I think her moves were, I guess whenever she was on offense, it seemed like I was a little more interested. But there's something about Mercedes' moveset that's just, it just feels bleh to me. I can't figure it out. You're a Mercedes fan and you're pissed at me because I sound stupid. Yeah, I probably do. Again, I'm not an expert here. I just know that for some reason, maybe you guys can even help pinpoint what it is that's not, like why I'm not enjoying her versus watching someone like a Toni Storm. I even heard people saying in the live chat, people were saying that her finisher got messed up again, and people were saying that she constantly is messing up that finisher and it never quite looks right. So that only makes me wonder, are there other moves that I'm watching her do that I just don't know aren't looking right because I'm just not used to seeing what they look like at all. Sadly, this was the most forgettable match for me, and it wasn't entertaining. The other matches where I said it wasn't like my favorites, I still really enjoyed them. Like the Fatal 4-Way, I really did enjoy that one. This one is the only one I can say watching throughout the entire match, I was kind of tuning out. It just wasn't for me. Now for the AEW World Championship, Bryan Danielson, another one of my top AEW picks, versus Jack Perry. I thought this was a banger. And there's one thing I learned in this one is that Jack Perry can sell whatever Bryan Danielson's finisher is, the one with the knee. He can sell that like a champ. I love the entrances. I love that everybody got behind Bryan Danielson. It really is giving the feeling like he is going to be retiring. So it feels like he's taking in a lot of these moments. It feels like during his entrance, it's cool seeing him stand up on the turnbuckles, have a big smile on his face, everybody chanting his name, doing the yes, singing along to his theme. I could really appreciate that. And I'm going to be sad if he does end up retiring in the near future because I just got into this. So I would have loved to have seen him more in his prime years, but I have been able to a little bit on the Patreon. So shout out to those of you who have sent those. Now, I have a few things I want to say about this match. Overall, the match itself, very entertaining, definitely higher up on the list of matches for the entire show. But this is the one I want to go back to what I was talking about earlier, where it just felt like it was one kick out too many. Jack Perry sold his ass off and just went flying, full backflip or somersault or whatever when he took the second knee. He did it like twice, by the way, by the end of it. And it was such a good sell. The dude went flying. The cover, 1, 2, no. Somehow we kick out on that. And in that one, I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you here because for the Will Ospreay match, you did it. I doubted and you still delivered. This one I didn't feel like delivered as good of an ending as what it would have been. They ended up finishing it with Jack Perry like just laying there or sitting up and being like, hit me again. And then he gives him the knee and then he pins him. So maybe you guys, is that like a story thing that I'm not knowing? Maybe that had a more significant ending than what I understand because I haven't seen, maybe that's a reference to something, but it really felt like the crowd was just going nuts for the near fall that happened before that. And it would have been such a sick ending. And then after that, it felt like the pop wasn't really there for the ending. I'm happy to get clarification on it if there's something, maybe it was a reference I just don't understand. Now, after the match, Christian comes out with his homies and he's got like a document or something. I'm guessing it functions somewhat like a Money in the Bank briefcase. He was going to cash in the thing that he wanted all in, and Moxley and his homies come in and they say no. So I was a little disappointed. I thought I was going to see like an AEW like cash in for the first time. But then John Moxley turns and just starts beating the crap out of Brian. And then it got a little weird. The bag over the head. I'm curious. How do you feel about that? That one didn't bother me too much. Not as much as stuff kind of bothered me later in the show. But it felt a little killy. You know what I mean? It felt a little bit more than just the wrestling that I was used to. So thankfully I could see that Brian had made a hole for himself so he could breathe. But like I was getting a little bit nervous because like realistically that's like super dangerous. So I hope there's not some kid that's like tries to replicate that, because that's like a super easy thing to replicate. That could be really bad. So that was a little bit much. Like I'm not complaining, but I didn't expect it. I did find it funny that the AEW announcer said, not to worry, AEW has the best medical staff in all of this sport. And then it cuts to 4 medics like carrying his dangling body, all just holding a limb out instead of bringing a stretcher or anything. I don't think they meant to, but that was really good comedic timing. All right, we gotta talk about this main event because I coincidentally was very prepared for this main event. Now, just by sheer coincidence or by intention by one of the patrons, me and Tally did just like literally the day before we watched the Full Gear Texas Death Match between Swerve and Hangman. So thankfully we did have some sort of context of how bad this could potentially get. And before we got into this one, that was the most brutal and violent match I had ever seen, referring to the Texas Deathmatch one that they had done. So my expectations after watching Dynamite this week, seeing the whole house burning down thing, my expectations were just sky high that this was going to be nasty. And the reality ended up being, instead of trying to keep up with their previous match of being super nasty with the crazy amount of blood, they kind of went for a much more brutal, brute force, power kind of approach, instead of it being all just constant bleeding. Now, I'll say the staples were easier to handle the second time around. The first time, the shock value got every ounce out of me. The whole stapling in the cheek thing and all that was nasty. But the second time around, it wasn't as bad. I was a little bit more prepared for what that was going to look like. What I was not prepared for was genuinely being concerned that Swerve Strickland had snapped his back. You don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go see it, or don't, if I'm being completely honest. But there's a cinder block in the middle of the ring, and he gets like power bombed onto this cinder block. And anyone who thought this wasn't a real cinder block, all those doubts can go out the window, because that dude hit that. And you saw his back like morph over it, and that thing, the block had absolutely no give to it whatsoever. I thought the dude's back snapped. That was one of the like nastiest power bombs onto an object, probably the nastiest I have ever seen, and I was genuinely worried. And at this point, I'm not even 100% sure he wasn't just being carried by adrenaline to the end of the show. Now, there was a weird spot with the referee suddenly having a massive issue with chairs. I understand what they were going for. Before you jump to explain it, I understand they were trying to set up him reaching for the chair so that they could do like a buckshot off of his back and that whole thing. I get it, but it felt forced when the referee, in the middle of this unsanctioned match, which is pretty cool, by the way, the whole like AEW does not take responsibility thing. I think they could have gone further with it. We talked about it in the stream. I think you should have gone like no announcers, cut all the crowd lights, and just have the ring illuminated. I'd even go no ref or something like that. Would have been kind of cool. But anyway, the ref doing that weird thing where he just suddenly cares about chairs just to set up that spot, and then he was like holding his position waiting for the move for a little bit longer. I think the timing was weird on that. Hangman got dropped on like the edge of the cinder block, and you could see like just like slice. I feel like it just took like a strip off of his back and he was bleeding from that. But then the ending happened, and this is where I learned that I do have a line. Now, I want to be very clear, something that I have made very clear since the beginning of this channel. You will never hear me say that match sucked. You will never hear me say that wrestler sucks, or that is bad, or that's dog crap. You will never hear me say it, because I am fully aware that for everything that I don't enjoy in pro wrestling, there is people out there that loved it. So it makes no sense for me to say, even if it's an opinion, it makes no sense for me to say that it sucks when the reality is it's just not for me. And I'm letting you know right now, taking a syringe and driving it through someone's cheek in the middle of a wrestling match is not for me. I heard a lot of people agree. I heard a lot of people say they loved it. I am definitely someone who never wants to see that again. I watched it. I did not look away. I gave it a chance. I consumed it. I processed it. I hated it. And if they ever pull out a syringe again, I will look away. Call me soft. I don't care. I never, ever want to see that again. It's a shame that that happened too, because immediately after was an insane chair shot that made the entire place explode, and that's when the ref called the match. And it looks like, I am hoping, I am praying that that was a gimmicked chair, because if he actually hit him so hard with a regular chair that his head went through the seat, that dude's done, especially after all the other crap he was dealing with. But I have to imagine that was a chair very specially designed to give under that circumstance. Now, I'm not going to let the syringe spot take away how I felt about that match. I still think it was a fantastic match. Was it a little crazy? Yeah. Was it all like pure wrestling? No, but I do think it was more wrestling than the first time. I don't know if it's the first time actually, than the first one that I watched when they did the Texas Death Match. But between the two, I think I actually liked the Texas Death Match one better. Could it be because I saw it first, so I was getting more shock value from it? Maybe. But in this one, there was two key moments that really stuck out for me that I guess I shouldn't say I didn't enjoy it, but it took me out of it a little bit. It was when Swerve got powerbombed onto the cinder block. I found myself jumping out of the enjoyment for a second and genuinely wondering, is that dude okay? Like, actually, is that person okay? Seeing his back morph over it just kind of, it put me in a state of worry that didn't feel in character kind of worry. It wasn't like I wasn't having fun. You know, you can worry about it because like, oh my God, is he good? Like, that was one where I actually felt like, oh shit, that might have been too much. But that one wasn't really that bad, so don't come at me for that one. It's the one I'm really being a wuss about is this syringe. I don't ever want to see that again. I hated it. It took me out of it. I never want to ever see that again. But as a whole, the entire show, All Out was badass. And I think I'm only going to enjoy it more as I get to know these wrestlers. And I don't know if I'll be making another like true AEW themed video until the end of the month. But when I do, that's when I am going to talk about my experience of fully diving into AEW, watching weekly show stuff and the pay-per-view, and just kind of see what it was like and see how the needle has moved for me as a fan watching AEW, see how much more I intend to stick with it, or if I will stick with it, or maybe I'll only watch certain shows. I don't know. Call it an experiment. I'm just a wrestling fan that's a new wrestling fan that wants to watch more wrestling. If you made it this far in the video, I have excellent news. You're probably a really good fit to join our Discord. In the Discord, you can be a fan of any promotion and all promotions, WWE, TNA, New Japan, AEW, anything, and all of the toxic people that find their way in there get swiftly removed. So if you want to be able to comfortably and safely be a fan of any and all promotions without getting in really toxic debates like you might find on the internet somewhere else, I think this might be the home for you. So the link is down below if you would like to join the Discord. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much to all the patrons that are flying up the screen. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.